Joining us in the Arutz Sheva studios in Jerusalem is Susanne Wasum-Rainer, Ambassador of Germany to Israel. Shalom.
Shalom.
So first of all, thank you very much for coming to our studio in Jerusalem. And on Sunday, Germany marked 1,700 years of Jewish life in Germany. First of all, a few words about that, the significance of marking that day.
Well, we are referring to a document that was found and that is known as the oldest kind of testimony of Jewish life north of the Alps. And it gave Jews in Cologne the right to have functioned in the city of Cologne, in the administration of the city of Cologne. Cologne was Roman at the time. So we use this document to shed light on Jewish presence in Germany, on the contribution of Jewish German citizens to German culture, and to it's a big awareness campaign to make people more aware and more proud of the Jewish roots of the German society, of German culture, of the Christian Jewish roots of Europe.
Wow. Now you're here in Israel as the ambassador for how many years already?
I arrived in September 2018. Shnatai.
How's it feel? All right, hear the Hebrew. We'll get to that soon. How's the feeling? How's the feeling really being the representative of Germany in Israel?
It's a very unique relationship, of course, between Israel and Germany. The history is the joint history, the tragic history we have is playing a big role. And I feel it's a huge honor to serve the Israeli-German relationship, to be a translator of what Germany is today in Israel and vice versa. I think it's a very important job.
So you mentioned the tragic history, and when we look at the 1,700 years, there are terrible years in the middle. Of course, this is all in the wake of the Holocaust. How is the Holocaust, influencing the connection today?
I think the German-Israeli relationship will never be out of the shadow of the Holocaust. Mm-hmm. And it's a central element of the relationship. It is with regard to that history that Germany assumes a very particular responsibility towards Israel, as the Chancellor has formulated in a famous speech at the Knesset in 2008. The security of Israel is part of the German raison d'etat. And we also assume a very particular responsibility regarding the remembrance of the Holocaust. We are convinced that we owe that not only to the victims, that we owe that to ourselves, mm-hmm. to the future generation. And so I think it is not, in everyday political decisions, but it's present. It's always present. The responsibility, historic responsibility, the awareness of the Shoah.
Wow. Now, as we talk about the Holocaust, we, of course, our next topic will be anti-Semitism. And we see the rise in anti-Semitism in Europe, in the world. What could and should be done, and what is being done?
First of all, let me say, I feel it's terrible that after the Shoah, there is still something like anti-Semitism mm-hmm. in the world. And it's particularly painful when we speak about Germany. But it has always been present, and we are convinced that this is one of the priorities of all German governments. It's the priority of the present German government to fight with all possible legal and other means against anti-Semitism. We are living in a time where populism is rising also. We live in this period of a pandemic where scapegoats are again being looked for, and mm-hmm. We see this terrible...
Blaming the Jews for the virus. Yeah.
So we feel anti-Semitism is not an opinion, but it's a crime, and there is no lowest threshold. There is no form of anti-Semitism is acceptable. So we fight particularly against all forms of anti-Semitism in the virtual world. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to fight against that, like anti-Semitism in real world. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of education efforts in Germany. There is penal laws. There is all forms of, all steps you can take are being taken.
And as we mentioned, the Holocaust, is the Holocaust being used in a positive way as part of this education? Like explaining to the people of Germany, look what we experienced and we can't get to that again?
I mean, it's one element, it's that never again. But there is also on the other side, on the bad side, the distortion of Holocaust by all those people who are blaming Jews. And so we are, as the presidency of the IRA this year and last year, the International Holocaust Remembrance group, we formulated also a lot of guidelines how to deal with
define.
That. Yeah.
And really, how do you relate to that topic of when is it anti-Israel and when is it anti-Semitism? Some people look at different protests against Israeli policy and say, no, this is anti-Semitism. Where do you put the line?
I agree that the anti-Semitism of years ago, I'm against Jewish people, is now kind of a collective anti-Semitism directed against the state of Israel. So I don't know if there's a line, but it's a different expression of old anti-Semitism, just with new words.
Okay, let's go back now to the relationship between Germany and Israel, the official relationship. We're talking about friendship. How is it seen on the ground? We know that in terms of the military, there's lots of cooperation.
As you said, I know the German-Israeli relationship for a couple of decades already. And what I see now, when I'm now ambassador here, it's extremely broad, it's extremely intensive. There is basically no field of possible cooperation that is left out. I mean, including the military cooperation. That is just amazing how soldiers from Germany are being trained in Israel, how Israeli soldiers are participating in exercises in Germany. It's amazing how dense it is. It's amazing.
Now, in terms
science
as well
is a very important field also.
Wow. Now, in terms of policy, Germany does oppose many issues of Israeli policy when it comes to building in Judea and Samaria, expanding what some call the settlements, even building in Jerusalem in some areas. And Germany does come out and oppose these issues from time to time.
Germany has held this position for a long time, basically since 1967, after the Six-Day War. Our political opinions are based on resolutions of the Security Council, binding resolutions of the Security Council, on humanitarian law, on legal basis. And this is that we don't recognize these areas to be Israeli, but we ask for a negotiated solution, and looking also maybe on the experiences in Europe. We think that a permanent solution needs cooperation of all sides of the conflict. Our feeling is that the two-state solution would be maybe the most durable solution for this conflict. So, and as long as we are not there, we have this position that we don't recognize unilateral steps.
So, by the way, where we are now in Jerusalem, how is this area defined? We're not in East Jerusalem. How is this area defined officially by you, by the embassy, by Germany?
Well, we are in Jerusalem, and what the final status of Jerusalem will be, that is waiting for what the end of negotiations is. I don't think that West Jerusalem, we feel that this is the seat of the government, so we are constantly in Jerusalem and doing our work also.
And when we talk about embassies, we always have to ask, when is the embassy moving to Jerusalem?
Well, we don't know yet. We are just moving into a new embassy building in Tel Aviv. A brand new building.
Let's end with a special initiative to allow descendants of Holocaust survivors to receive easily a German citizenship.
This is the politics we always had, but there were difficulties still in the legal basis for doing that. These difficulties had been solved or had been excluded, the legal basis has been changed, and now what we see for 2 years now already is a lot of interest by children, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors to get the German nationality. So we have some I think some 1,000 a year.
Okay. So how's your stay in Israel? I understand, by the way, that 20 years ago, you were here already?
Yes.
As what?
Yes. I was here as a student. I was here at a former position in the embassy, and I'm back again. Yes.
How's your Hebrew?
Lo nora.
Lo nora. Not bad. Okay, Susanne Wasum-Rainer. My German is okay.
Perfect.
Ambassador of Germany to Israel, thank you very much for joining us and good luck.
Thank you for your interest. Thank you very much.